Hi all. I thought I'd do a video just before I go to the fabricators to make the first prototype, which is going to be the first week in January, and also to bring those who've not seen this project up to speed on where we are, and some new information for those who've been following this right from the beginning. So let's start at the beginning. The Amiga. Obviously, most people, there's a picture here you can see, is probably what most people who know anything about Amigas will remember the Amiga 500. And this is the only exposure they had to it. They may have played games, etc. But there was a massive amount of people who were using Amigas for productivity. And it all started off with this little baby here, which is the Amiga 1000. I won't go into details about it. I've done videos about it. Lots of people have done videos about it. But it started off a complete new paradigm in computing, and to my mind was probably the best computer ever made. But then I know most people think I'm biased on this. Anyway, so start off with the Amiga 1000. What do we have next? Then we moved on to the Amiga 2000. Now, the Amiga 2000 became the big box Amiga. It allowed you to expand it. You could put in cards, you could put video recording cards, sound cards, all kinds of cards into this like you would a normal PC. It was still pretty much a 1000, but with slots, which made it absolutely fantastic. Now, the one thing that was really good about the video toaster, I suppose the biggest selling thing for it, was the video toaster. The video toaster was probably pretty much the best thing ever invented for the Amiga, and it allowed anybody to have a full production suite. Up to 4 cameras, video switching, 3D graphics, titling, and so much. So it really was a fantastic machine. Next in line came my favourite. Now, the Amiga 3000. To me, this is the first workstation class Amiga we had. Full 32-bit on the bus. Everything about it was 32-bit. The graphics were improved. Still the same basic resolutions, but it had some extra features, and it had a flicker fixer built in, the SCSI interface built in, 16 mega RAM, etc. And it had a much faster bus, so it was a great machine. Also, something that a lot of people don't know about the 3000. One of the reasons why I'm really into doing this project is it was the basis of a product called Virtuality, which was the very first commercial virtual reality system, and it used to be in lots of arcades. And yes, there was I'm trying to remember the name of the 3D card. There was a 3D card that was put into the 3000, but the 3000, because of its multitasking operating system, handled everything else. The input output, it was controlling everything, the headset movement, everything was controlled by the 3000, and the data was fed onto the 3D graphics card. So it was the first virtual reality machine. Right, moving on from there, we come to the 4000, which is probably the last, which was pretty much the last in the line. I've not included the 2 tau variants here, but this was the last of the big box Amigas. It had a better graphics chip, not massively improved, but it went up to 8-bit planes instead of 6, higher resolutions, 256 colours, 256,000 colour hand mode. So it was a good upgrade. But unfortunately, that was pretty much the end of the line. So for Commodore, of course, they went bust after that, which we all know. Anyway, so that's a brief history of how we got to where we are now. Now, a little bit of personal history then. About 1988-89, I started a company with a guy called James Campbell called Checkmate Digital Limited. And we wanted to develop a product that could take the Amiga 500, allow it to be expandable as if it was, for example, a 2000, because the 2000 was out at the moment, but it cost a fortune to buy a 2000. And there was this product out here called, let me just click on here, the Bodega Bay. And that was the first one. That was actually out in California, and it was a fantastic thing, but not the prettiest looking thing in the world, but it literally, you stuck it on top of the 500, and it gave you some slots. And it was great. It was bulky, but it was only really sold in America. So what we wanted to do, now, was we brought out a product called the Checkmate 1500, which is kind of an inspiration for this new project. And as you can see, it was a complete case design. So it was a nice slimline case. The Amiga 500 keyboard went in its own separate aluminium casing with a nice connecting cable. And you can see inside, you could fit quite a bit of equipment in here. To a couple of floppy disks, a hard disk drive, your expansion card. What you can't see underneath there is you could have had an accelerator card in there. So usually it was Mega Midget Racers and so on. And you can see here we've got the A590 controller in here. But we used to put inside the HC8 Plus SCSI and 8 meg RAM card from GBP in here. So you could have a SCSI controller, an 50 megahertz 030, all kinds of things in here. And on the right hand side, you could have put in here, if you moved that drive out of the way and put it in where the second floppy was, you could put a flicker fixer in there. So it was a pretty good little expansion case. I hope Dave Pleasance's new book is going to come out with a little bit more history about this, because some of you may be aware of the whole, in the UK, the Checkmate 1500 and the Commodore 1500 story. So have a look at his book. He said he's going to put a little update in there, which we've put together, just to let people know what really happened. But anyway, so that was the Checkmate 1500. And it sold quite well. It was a quite nice little design. It was a lovely, nice, strong steel case. But again, it's the inspiration for what I'm doing now. So the original 1500, or Checkmate 1500, could only take an Amiga 500 motherboard, and of course, that was all that was available then. But recently, I thought we could do this again. I thought that the whole project is based around being able to create a retro computer for people who like the retro look. Like the Amiga 3000, it's designed around the look of the 3000, but then it can take a whole slew of different systems. So for example, it can take an Amiga 1200, here's my 1200, you can take the motherboard out, stick it in a case. You could put a 600 motherboard in it. So not really, you wouldn't really want to put much with a 600 in, but if you've got a Vampire, then it becomes a pretty serious little bit of kit, so you can put that inside the case. I'm going to go through this later on and show you everything fitted in. Next in line, we've got, you might want to build yourself an AROS machine based on some old PC components you got laying around. Or, as you can see, we've got the Tabor. This is Trevor's Amiga 1. I'm not exactly sure the true designation of this, but as far as I'm aware, it's called the Tabor A1222. But basically a Power PC system, and with that we'll be able to run Amiga OS and Morphos. Now finally, which is where I'm really interested in, I like the idea of this case doing virtual reality again. So it started the virtual reality movement. Why not do a case that can do it again? So this is my real interest in doing this, was having an A3000 inspired case running the latest and greatest GPUs and PC motherboard. Now, yes, if you want to run virtual reality, you need to run Windows or Linux, mostly Windows. But of course, this might give people incentive to start pushing the hardware and the software so that the Amiga operating systems can maybe go down the same route. So that's kind of the mix. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually take you through the case in its various configurations. So you can see how all of this is achieved. Okay, so before I go through different configurations, which are specific to the use case that you may be interested in doing with this, I want to show you the basic case and what it comes with. Important to understand that this is a retro designed case that will use new equipment and old equipment. So my use case is I'm going to be putting in a modern PC motherboard with probably a GTX 1080 in it to run virtual reality, etc. But I also want to run AROS on it as well. So that to me is my main thing. But also I'm interested in an A500 version of it with a Vampire. So I'll probably going to have a couple of these. But I want you to see is the basic case. So when you see in the Kickstarter it says case, understand what the case is. Okay, different packages will have different components added into it to make up. Oh, it may just be that I'll do them as optional extras, so that's to be decided in the when I go ahead with the Kickstarter. So anyway, the basic case. So with the case, obviously there's a nice injection molded front, and the injection molded front is the reason why I'm kickstarting this, because to mold this, the goal of this was to make a re-inspired, a new version of the A3000 look, but that can do many things rather than just. Fun enough, you can't put a 3000 motherboard in it, so people have asked that that's not designed for that. But it's to give people a look, because a lot of people, including myself, think it's probably the prettiest Amiga case that was ever made. Plus, it was the workstation case. Plus, it was the computer that launched the virtual reality market commercially with virtuality. So there's a bit of history there. And I, you know, being a bit of an Amiga fan, obviously that's where the road I took. So the basic case, as you can see now, if you put this side by side with the 3000, it's a bit like getting the old Mini and a new Mini. It's inspired by. It's not meant to be a clone. So the design is there, but of course I've expanded on the design. So hopefully you'll look at it and go, oh, it looks like a 3000. Then when you realise you can put 5¼ inch drives in it, then you oh yeah, the 3000 couldn't do that, and there's a lot of stuff that the 3000 couldn't do. So, but the basic case is obviously you've got your injection molded front, and this is pretty much what you get as a basic case. So there's obviously the front, there's the lid. Let me turn the lid off, and inside then here's the base. Okay, so the main bit across the center. In fact, if I just click on there so you can see it highlighted, that's the base. And then at the back, there are about 3 or 4 different types of rear, which you're going to see as I go through, because I'm going to do each use case with this. But as you can see, there's the rear that's the default setup when it comes. In fact, actually, this is the one for the PC. If you're building a PC motherboard, you see this great big hole. These 2 big slots here are utility panels, which we're going to have holders, for example, Raspberry Pi or MIDI interface, internal MIDI interface, those kind of things. And then there's the drive tray, obviously. Let me turn the drive tray on. I have to find it in the list, which is actually very annoying because I can't see it because I'm going blind. There you go. Drive tray. Now the drive trays designed so you can put drives above and below. So 5¼ inch, you'll see there's an awful lot of holes in there. 5¼ inch drive base, 3½ inch drives. You can stick 2½ inch SATAs underneath it. You're gonna see this as we go through this. Now also, if you can see here where it's green, that's the LED panel. That's so that on the front, if you remember right, if you was looking, you can see it's got the 2 LEDs. I've kept the colours to match the 3000. Okay, just purely for, you know, historical reasons. So you've got that on there, so you'll be able to connect that to your PCs, your Amigas, etc. And on the left over here, which is difficult to notice, is the that's where the button's going to be, the button assembly. That's actually still to come, but there'll be a button assembly, so you get the nice Amiga 3000 looking button. But it will turn on whatever you're using. So that's the basics, whatever that was. So that's the basics of the case, and when it says case, that is what you're getting. Okay, that's the basic part of it. Now, options. As far as the case is concerned, now there is going to be a riser for it. Okay, now the idea of the riser is, this is an optional extra, but the idea of the riser is so you can stick a keyboard underneath it. Now, it won't fit a full keyboard. It's designed for what's called a 10 keyless keyboard. And so you can get yourself a nice mechanical keyboard, USB, PS2, whatever, and slide it under the case, should you wish to. You don't have to, but it's there as an option, because that's one of the things I liked about the 1000, was being able to slide my keyboard underneath the computer. So that is there as an option. Okay, so now the keyboard obviously doesn't come with it. Hopefully that's pretty obvious. But the riser is an option. Now it may be that we get, if I get to a certain number, you know, have it as a stretch goal. That's the word I was looking for. I may make it a stretch goal, because once the mould is done, the actual including the part is not a big deal, but the actual moulds, with all this, the moulds are actually very expensive. So we may do that as a stretch goal. We'll see when it comes to it. Right, so that's the basic case. Let me turn off the riser. Turn off the riser. Here we go. So that's the basic case. And I think, oh, did I explain about the filter? I don't think I did, because I've done this once before. Let me just go for the filter again. This will probably be a stretch goal. I've put in a slot here. If you look closer, you can see there's kind of a slot there, and there's one over here as well. And the idea for that is to put in a filter, a dust filter, so it will slot down into there, so the air that's going to get sucked through and pumped out the back will be filtered. We're going to see how if that's enough for the airflow. It might need some extra holes in the front here. At the moment, I don't think it's going to, but once the prototype's built, we can do some real airflow testing, put some temperature gauges in, and just see how well it works. But I think that's going to be enough to pull air through. Everything's going to be aimed at ejecting out the back. So I think that covers the basic for the case itself. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through all the different options based on the configuration types. Now, a really important part of the design of this case is these two panels in the front. So you can see here we have two. It's designed with two holes at the front. In fact, if I turn them off so we can see, insert, right. So basically you've got this great big slot at the front which can take two devices. And one of the reasons why, again, for the Kickstart is because moulding these panels, there's about 4 different types to a standard. So, for example, and these can be interchanged, okay, swap backwards and forwards. So don't think one has to go in one place. So say, for example, if you want to, for example, just have one here. Let me just go and find this. You can put a 5 1/4 inch DVD, bang, or any device 5 1/4 wallop, and you can see it's now sits in there quite happily. And you could put it in the left if you want to. In this case, I've got it to the right. I think it's better if you're going to put these, stick them over to the right hand side if you've got great big devices. You say, for example, we want a, if I hide that now, I might want to put in there a, it's funny this, isn't it? They always disappear. Memory card. So I want to put a memory card in here. So what I do is I use the standard, there's a standard floppy blanking plate. Okay. Now, one of the things I have to decide is, do I include all the blanking plates or do I include the ones that are appropriate for the order? So again, that'll all be in the Kickstarter. But you can see, so a normal floppy disk could go in here as well. So I'm not sure if I've actually got a standard, have I got a floppy disk? Mitsumi? Yes, I have. Look, I can turn that off. There you go. So I can have a standard floppy disk in there. Turn that off. If I turn that off. Or I can have an Amiga. Let me turn that one off. I can have an Amiga floppy disk sitting there, so I use the Amiga floppy blank. Come and find the Mitsumi, I plug that in there. You see? So these blanks are crucial to the design of this, so you can configure it however you want. And also bear in mind the 2.5 inch drives can sit underneath the drive tray as well, so they're taking no space whatsoever. On the left hand side, again, now remember these, you can move these either side. It doesn't really matter. I would put the big devices on the right hand side though. That would be my preference. So let's say insert DVD. So I can have here a slot load in DVD. If your system supports it, we could put a slot load in DVD in it. Yeah. So that's crucial to you've got 2 bays, but you can put more than 2 things in. So you can technically get 4 drives in here, 2 2.5s underneath, and 2 you can put in it. You could even, if you wanted to, just have a blank. Instead of having a slot drive there, where's the blank? Oh, it's in that side. Okay, let's turn the Amiga off. So we could just have a, where's the Mitsumi? You could have a blank, let's leave the slot drive on. You could have that like that, and I believe I've actually got one sitting in here, a hard drive. Oh no, I've actually got it hanging underneath there, but you could have it mounted on top and have a blank. Or you could have 2 blanks. I mean, you know, you can configure this however you like. Okay, let me turn that off, turn this off. Now, we've got that sorted out. Now, the next part, obviously power supply. Power supply is really important. Now, when you buy the case, you don't come with a power supply. So if you're building a PC, well, you got to buy one. So that's obvious. But if you're putting a 500 motherboard, 1200 motherboard, 600 motherboard, you can, as you'll see later on, just put in an Amiga power supply, plug it into the back of the Amiga, and away you go. That's fine. It will run quite happily without spending money. However, the plan is obviously to use a power supply to power these and give more power. So if you look on the right hand side here now, you see this is where there's an SFX standard power supply that's designed to fit in there. It's got vents underneath, as you can see, and it will suck air straight out the back. You can pick these up for about 30 pence. In fact, I've actually got one here. Might as well show you this stuff, otherwise what's the point of owning the camera? Right, so you can see I've got one here. This is about £30, this one. It's quite a nice little power supply. And it plugs into there. Now, I would not build a high power PC with this. Don't do it. Trust me on that. Okay? But if you're building an Amiga, 300 watts is more than good enough. And that will become quite important later on. But they also do those in up to 600 watts. So if you're going to build a PC with a 1080 and so on, spending quite a bit of money, you want to get a quality one. Now the 600 watts. There's a 450 one for about £100 and there's a 600 watt one for about £150. You're paying a premium because they're very small. But that's the power supply side, and of course that obviously is not included. Next one, underneath, if you look underneath the front ports, if I zoom into here. Now, this is just an example of what we're going to have on the front of here. But this is kind of my configuration. So what I'm looking to doing is being able to put in a compact flash card in the front and a couple of USB ports, probably USB 3s, more than likely. And this is more aimed at your PC, okay? But you'll be able to 3D print your own front panel for this because it's literally just a little board that sits, you can see it sits there, it screws into the plates underneath, and you've got the devices there. And I've also got on here an HDMI socket. So this is my configuration for virtual reality. So 2 USB ports and HDMI for the headset, so you can plug it in, etc., and away you go. But this is going to be something that over time there'll be different versions. People will be able to configure it, make their own 3D printed holder for whatever devices they want in there. So that's that. Now, let's have a look at the back. Fans. Now, I don't think you're going to need fans for an Amiga. So the case is more than likely going to come with little grills, which I should have somewhere, and which will probably be lying to me. Let me just grab one of these grills. Here we go. Not decided exactly what's going to go. You can see these little grills, if you can see them. They'll be on the default case and fitted to it, so there's no holes. I'm also considering these things have actually got vents on them. So, but ultimately, should you wish to do this, and especially for the PC side, I'm using 50mm fans. Now, a lot of people are going to say 50mm is tiny. Yeah, it's probably true, but there's 3 of them, so there's a fair bit of air going to be blown through this. Now these ones I've chosen, I think about £5 each, but they're so-called silent fans. Silent fans. I doubt they're silent. You've got things spinning, but hopefully they're going to be fairly quiet. And so put 3 of these in it. Should you need it. And really, you're only going to do this if you're going to build a PC. I don't think an Amiga is going to actually need any of this but 3 of them will give a reasonable flow. Now, crucial to understand, this is not an overclocking case. Do not buy this if you want to overclock it. Standard GPU settings, PT settings, because you know if you want to overclock something, you need to put it in a tower case with a lot more vent, a lot of bigger fans. There'll be no problem with this case as far as default settings, and maybe a little bit of overclocking, but if you overclock at your own risk, the case design doesn't lend itself to overclocking. So let's turn these fans on so you can see when they're in place. Fans, here we go. And so they're the fans. So obviously you can see it's cutting in there a bit, but don't worry about it. So we've got the fans there. Okay, 3 nice fans, 50mm fans, sit in the back. Preferably get yourself some really good quality ones. obviously when we build it, we'll use the silent fans. One more thing that I haven't mentioned on here is also there's going to be some soundproofing in the lid. How this is going to work, I'm not sure yet, but we're going to put I know that you can get soundproofing sheets which are going to go inside the lid, because obviously because especially for fans and so on, it might make a little bit of noise. So we're going to put some sound deadening material inside it, to make it a nice quality feel. The good thing about this case is that it's steel. It's not like the cheap steel you get in the cheap cases. It's really good quality steel. So there'll be a certain amount of deadening because of that. But again, we're working on keeping this thing as quiet as possible, because we all like something that's not too noisy. Okay, there we go. So let's get to the A500. After all, the original Checkmate 1500 was based on the A500, so it makes sense to do the same thing again. Now you might ask, why would you want to use the board from a 30-year-old computer to make and splash out so much money? Well, you'd be surprised how much people still enjoy using the 500s and how much you can still do with them. This case really is going to allow 500 owners to make themselves a nice looking case, put everything they ever want in it, and really give some really good quality expansion. So let's show you this now. Now the key difference is you can see what I've got here. I put in some basics to start with. So I've got in the SFX power supply. Now if you notice over here where the mouse is, the power lead will plug into our board. Now, important to understand, this board here is an optional extra. Now, obviously, it may be part of an A500 case pack, but we're not expecting to ship it originally with the case, because not everyone's going to necessarily want it. Not everyone will be able to afford to do it straight away, and they may want to build it gradually as they go along. Because the board will not be cheap. I can't quote prices at the moment, but it won't be expensive. But it's not going to be. It's going to be in the Amiga kind of development, price range. But that board there, now you'll notice one thing quite special about it. It's got two slots up here. So you can see here I've got two slots. Now the first slot is actually a double edge connector. That's an 86 pin connector. So I can plug cards that were designed for the A500, take them out of the box, stick them in, plug them in, and away you go. The top one is a Zorro 2 slot that's in the A2000s. So it's the same as having a Zorro slot in a 2000. You can put cards that, and in fact I'll put a card in it now so you can see what I mean. Card small, so you can plug in there a card. Now it's important to understand we're not taking the full length cards, only the cards that go in the 2000 up to the edge of the edge connector. And the reason for that is I've got to limit how big this case goes, and most of the cards are anything interesting, like network cards, graphics cards, all the modern cards, they all fit within this profile, so they're fine. And of course you can see they stick out the back. There's two slots at the moment and there's only one card, but they're, potentially in the future we might be able to do a version with two 2000 slots. So there's always that option with two boards. But there's a reason for doing this configuration now. Oh, while I'm here, have a look round. You can see I've got a hard drive in here now. Obviously that one's sitting there it's a bit low, touching the motherboard. So you'd want to put a slimmer drive, or maybe a SSD drive in there, depending if your system can connect to it. There's options here. So I've got the Amiga floppy disk, a DVD. Now again, depending on what you're going to put in here. So if we go for the front, we've got the slot card. There's the floppy disk. Okay, but I can turn these off and swap these around again. So I think a lot of people may well do along the lines of this. So if I turn these off and turn off the floppy. Okay, so what a lot of people probably want to do is stick in, for example, if I can find it, there we go, stick in the drive. Now let me just, before I show you the next part, if you notice, because of that slot there, what this allows you to do, if I turn off the Zorro card, the big Zorro card, so we can see, you can also put in For example, now this is what I think this is going to be really useful for. You can stick in there an ACA 500 plus or something like it, because there's other cards out there. So basically cards that you would put into the side of the machine. It gives you 8 meg of memory, and it gives you a 1 or 2 CFs card slots or an internal IDE drive bay. But in this case, I think this is quite a nice one, because not only that, it gives you a 1200 card slot. So you can see if I can then turn on an accelerator. You can see I can have an accelerator. So that's the footprint of a standard 1200 accelerator, be it an 030, an 040, or an 060, or even probably not a Power PC. But whatever you can put into the ACA 500 plus. So I think that's a fantastic one, and I use that on my Amiga 1000. So that's a really nice little board you can put in there. Now, one of the reasons why I was going to show you was why I stopped there. The one thing with the putting an ACA 500 plus is, if you can see this compact flash here, that's the internal one there. That's the one used by the system hard disk. But this one here is can be used as what's called an exFAT, or a Windows formatted DOS partition drive you can put in there. It's, as with everything, it's very tricky to get the position I did. I don't want to be sticking out the front, it'd be really nice, but it's not necessarily as easy as that. So what I've done is I've kind of compromised, and if you notice, I've got this one here. No, that's not the one. I want the that one. That one. Amiga floppy drive. Oh. That's the one I wanted. Sorry, miles away there. Let's turn off that Amiga floppy drive. Right. Okay. So you can see here, I've got the fittings for this. It's a very tight fit. But if you turn it around the front, you can see you've got your Amiga floppy disk drive and a slot here. Now this will need some tweaking, okay, and I may even have a cover over it. I don't know for sure yet. I may put a cover over it, so you pop a cover off and put your finger in and pull the card out and put it back in again. So that's what I'm thinking on with this. So that's a way of getting around that problem. So you've got a DVD drive, you've got a hard drive, you've got Amiga floppy disk drive, and a slot there for compact flash. Now that's for the ACA 500 plus, specifically designed for that. But again, because of these panels, you can 3D print your own. That's one of the great things about this. So that's one of the things there. Now, another option, if I turn these off, let me just turn it off and I'll show you something. If you look underneath here, see that's the screw hole for it. And in fact, I haven't moved the fixing hole. Actually, I've moved it about and I haven't moved the fixing hole. But that fixing hole has got to be moved along there. And so it screws into there with an extender, so it supports this card. The accelerator card, that's going to need some kind of 3D printed holder to hold it in place, probably from the back, I'm not sure yet, but this card will be supported with that screw hole. Once I've moved it, of course, and I'll probably forget and then regret not having done that. Now let's turn off this, because there was another option as well. If I go down to here and I turn off my ACA 500 plus, the accelerator card, now you can have a vampire in it. Now if you've got a vampire in here, you notice there's an IDE socket there. Okay, you've got an IDE socket there. Put a longer cable on it, and then you could run it out the front. That compact flash there. So there's a lot of flexibility in here. Now also what I might do is on that socket there, I'm not sure quite how I'm going to do this yet, to be fair, but I'm going to probably allow you to, there's an awful lot of this me trying to find, right, be able to run it to there if you want to. You don't have to, you can sit there, you might not want to remove it, but you might want different, different drives and plug them in. So the potential for mounting it in the front there. Right, so and again, as I was saying earlier on, the fans at the back, I don't think you're really going to need fans, but you can put them on there if you want to, it's not a problem. But I don't think any of this is going to get that particularly hot. And you can see on the back, obviously, here's all the holes for the sockets. And the case will come with blanks for the port for the external ports, because obviously we don't want to see great big holes everywhere. Now we're going to assume, I doubt there'll be a blank for this, because we're going to assume people are going to want to put a power supply in it. But one of the things we will be doing is there'll be a 3D model catalogue, so you can just print these bits off as you go along and just order them, and then they'll come in the post. Right, so what else is there from the 500 I haven't shown? Obviously the LEDs. Oh, I suppose. Okay, the floppy disk, not floppy disk, the keyboard. If you remember on the original, probably don't remember actually, but the original Checkmate 1500, it had an external keyboard. I'm doing a couple of things on this. There's going to be, I've got a guy who's I can't remember his name. I'm going to put a link. Everyone's names will be in the Kickstarter video, but there's a guy that's developing a small board that's going to plug into the into this socket, not that socket, into the keyboard socket here. Okay, where you can see the mouse moving. It's going to plug into there, and it's going to bring a lead to the front with the PS2 connector. Now, what that means is you'll be able to plug any PC keyboard with a PS2 connector into the front, and it will run that keyboard. Now, however, I've got to have it running my Amiga keyboard. Yes, we will be doing a new case and cable kit. It's going to be expensive. I mean, you're probably talking £50–60 for the chassis to hold it, and then all the cables to run through like we did in the past. It's not going to be cheap. You'd be better off buying a PC keyboard, because this is almost a throw-in device for the 500. So probably going to price it as included in the 500 pack. So do bear that in mind. But if you want the external, if you want to use your Amiga keyboard externally, it's going to get more expensive. My opinion is you buy one of these beautiful new mechanical keyboards, which they've got some nice vintage ones. Put it on a PS2 connector, and then rip off those silly Windows keys and put Amiga keycaps on. Then it's pretty much, I mean, it's not an Amiga keyboard, but I think it's a nice way of doing this. If you want the keyboard, fine, but I'm happy to. We are going to do the design's done. It's no problem at all, but it is not going to be cheap, because we've got to make a base case, top case, two big keyboards to go, cables to go through the system. So you're probably talking about £50. Bear that in mind. So that's I think that's most of it about the 500. And yeah, I think I don't think there's anything else on the 500. So we'll move on to something else now. Okay, here's the one I'm most interested in, from a personal point of view. As I mentioned before, the Amiga 3000 was the computer that drove the first consumer level virtual reality system by Virtuality. Admittedly, it had a 3D engine card that was specially designed for it, but it did everything else. It choreographed everything, because it had this great multitasking operating system, massively high performance, drive speed, so it could read and write data so quick, and it could choreograph these virtual reality things really brilliantly. So, and people don't know this. People forget this. I think it's important for people to know these kind of things. So for me, I always thought it would be really cool, because I'm a bit of a virtual reality nut, would be to have a retro case design to show off the fact that, the Amiga 3000 did do this. And so I like the idea of the design of the case being based on the father of virtual reality. Let's put it that way. Now, to achieve this, we can put in here micro ATX and mini ITX. Now, I recommend mini ITX if you just build if you want to build a virtual reality one. Also, it's important to understand that this is not this is not going to be a good one for overclocking. It will handle standard temperatures fine, but it's not an overclocker's case. If you want to overclock your system, go buy a tower with lots of fans, etc. This is not the case for you. However, this will run a standard 1080. I've got a 1080. I'm going to put into an NVIDIA 1080. Is going to go into this. I haven't decided between Intel or AMD CPUs yet. one of the two is going to go in it, but that's going to be the basis of my machine to make a virtual reality system based around an Amiga 3000 designed case. Anyway, let's get on with this because again I'm waffling. You can see in this shot though I've got the window on the side because I want to show off the the glowing of the card. The initial Kickstarter may not have the window. It may come along later, or it may be a stretch goal. When I speak to the manufacturers, oh no, we can put that in there. I'll make it a stretch goal because I think it'd be really nice to have that to be able to see into the computer, and it's only really useful to the. Is only useful to the if you're putting a PC motherboard in it. Another thing for putting a PC motherboard is you might want to run AWOS. So that's always a good thing, which I've done in many videos on that. Right, so let's have a look at this. Take this thing apart. Yes, autosave, isn't that useful? Right, let's take this lid off. A3000, take the lid off. Right, now if I turn this around, what we can see here. Now I've taken out the drives. You'll notice I've got an SSD drive in there and I've got a slot loading drive bay. Again, you can put anything you like in here. You don't have to have anything. You can just have blanks across and have nothing. But I think it's quite nice to have the drives in there. And you can see I've got a mini ITX motherboard here with its fan. Now you've got about an 85mm gap between the board and I think again dimensions will be in the system, but so you don't want a huge great fan in there, but it will cope with it quite well. These three fans here again will be pulling, so anything comes off the CPU sucked straight out by those fans. The GPU, make sure you get one with a vent at the back. You don't want to be using one that blows hot air into the system. I think that's very important because the GPU is going to be, obviously with the fans at the front, the air is being pulled from the front, so there'll be good cool air blowing through it. So I'm as long as you're running at stock speeds, I don't see any problems with this at all. So micro ATX, you'll notice I've actually down here I've got a Raspberry Pi. Some people might ask, why have you got a Raspberry Pi in there? Well, these two slots can be used for anything basically. Make your own cutouts on a panel with 3D printing and so on. But putting a Raspberry Pi in there, I think a lot of people actually said they like the idea of it. It's not meant to be a Raspberry Pi case. If you've got tons of money, I'm not sure why you'd be putting a Raspberry Pi in it, but I see it as a second, have your PC and your Raspberry Pi program from the PC, cross develop, that kind of thing. That's how I see it. Or even for emulation, so on. So let's remove some of these bits so we can see a little bit clearer. So if I turn off the fan, we can see the PC motherboard. There's a power socket. Everything fits in here nice. There's loads of room in here. And what we do is we put in this PC riser card that I've got highlighted here. And what that does is it takes a socket up and it turns it round and it allows the GPU to then plug into that turned PCIe socket. Now it does mean you've got no more slots now, hence mini ITX. However, what you can do, there is an option. Let me kill that DVD first of all. Give myself some room here. Let's turn that off. Let's turn off this GPU. So you've seen a mini ITX motherboard in there with a full size GPU. Now, important to understand, you can't put the really large GPUs in there, but it will take something, for example, like your reference cards. It will take a 1080 Ti, 1060. It will take the AMD RX 480s, 580s. More than likely get a Vega in. I can't see any reason why you can't get a Vega in there, but I don't see a problem with that. But when you get the aftermarket ones where they put massive fans on them and so on, they're not going to go in. And I really think I will not recommend you put in a non-blower style GPU in here because we don't want the heat inside the system. We want it all blown out the back. Anyway, so that's there, as you can see. So and there's also a support bracket here, which has got to have screws, so it will obviously support this here. You can't see the holes in it, but there will be. So it will hold that rigid. Put that in. At some point, I will do a hanging bar. You can see there's a couple of slots here, so that it gives the end of the GPU some support as well. Because this end has got support, but the other end is kind of floating, and so we'll see how that goes when the prototype's made. Right, let me just delete. If I delete these now, I'm going to show you the other option that you've got. So if I turn off the GPU board and I turn off the Mini ITX, turn off the riser, okay, turn all these on. Let's turn off this Raspberry Pi for now. Let's get rid of that. Now I'm also going to turn off that card bay. I'm going to drop in a low profile rear. So if I put on the micro ATX motherboard now, turn that on, you see it'll take it. Now we were very close to getting an ATX motherboard in there, but there's no point. I see no point in it, but it doesn't fit. So it's only micro ATX and Mini ITX. However, important to understand, you're better off if you've got a motherboard and you can pop it in, see if it fits okay, then fine. I prefer the slimmer ones, so that this bit here is overhang a bit. Now I'll show you the reason why that might be a problem. See the power lead, the power connectors underneath. Now I can move that SSD drive and put it somewhere else, but you might not get the power connector in there. So it's probably better. Oh, I wish it would stop auto-saving. You're probably better off just getting a slimmer one. But you know, if you've got one, put it in. If not, make sure you get the right one. I'll probably do some reference boards that I recommend. But any Mini ITX, because I know that they all fit. It's really designed for Mini ITX. So now we've got this. You can see I've got my slots. Let me bring it a bit closer. Right. I'm now going to put into it a couple of low profile cards. Now it's only low profile cards you're going to put in here. So you've got a small GPU. Okay, and you might want to put, for example, Wi-Fi card or any low profile cards. I mean, you've got four bays where you can put these cards in. I personally think Mini ITX, riser, big GPU, you're laughing. I think that's what it was actually designed for. But this is just an option for people. I decided to put this in because it was mentioned about, well, can I put low profiles in there? So it's been done for that reason. Right, another thing you want to think about is power supply. Now these are SFX power supplies, as I mentioned before. Do not put in the 300 watt power supplies in here unless you're running a low power system. If you're going to be putting a GPU in it, you really want to be putting a 450 in it or a 600. They are a lot more expensive, I'll be fair. They are a lot more expensive. But that's because of the size. But you are getting a nice slimline case system here. So that's very important. And the fans, again, if you're building a PC, I obviously recommend the fans. I'm going to show you again. These are the fans that we're going to put in these. Okay, you can buy. They're 50mm fans. Now a lot of people out there are going to say 50mm fans are going to be really noisy. These are they're called silent fans. I don't believe a word of it, but I think they should hopefully be nice and quiet, and that's part of the prototyping testing. But I'm also putting some sound deadening material in the lid, so it should help keep the noise down. I don't think this is going to be a noisy system anyway, but again, this is all going to come out when we do the prototyping in January. So yeah, so that's the fans. So overall, I think we've pretty much covered the PC side of things. I'm sure if you've got any questions, you can fire them to me. There is obviously a lot more involved in it, but hopefully that's covered most things about the PC side of things. Thanks a lot. Okay, let's discuss the 1200 and the 600. Both these motherboards are going to fit into the case. And as you can see in here, I've got a 1200 motherboard fit in here with an accelerator card. The spacing is fairly tight at the end, but it is designed to take the full length card, so I can't see there being any problems with putting any card in. The space under, let me turn off this DVD drive again. The space underneath the card is about 9mm, so because you've got the fans on these things, that should help there. As far as ventilation is concerned, if you've got a powerful accelerator card on here, you've got a nice vent here. So all you've got to do is fit yourself a mini fan inside here to draw the air across and blow it underneath if you want to. Personally, I think there's going to be plenty of airflow. I don't think it's a problem because you've got the fan here, which will be sucking air right across. So it'll be going in that direction, straight across that accelerator card. So I don't see there being any problems. At the back, again, you probably don't need these fans. Let me turn the fans off, actually, because I don't think you're going to need them in here. 50mm fans. Obviously, the blanking plates will cover that up. I assume. Now, interestingly, again, I've left these two slots in here. It was mentioned, but because at the moment, with the 500, we've obviously got the edge connector, which is on the other edge of the board, so we can plug in there, put sockets and so on. People have asked about the I forget what they're called now, but the bus boards for the 1200. Now, to be honest, if you want a bus board, buy a tower case, put a bus board in it, etc. However, I'm leaving it open so that if someone wants to design, and we may well do this ourselves, I don't know, because the sockets may become available. That's one of the big problems with this, is getting the sockets for that edge connector. It's very tricky, but that may be resolved, which means we may be able to do one ourselves. I've got actually a modelled up, excuse me, I've actually got here expansion board. So the idea originally with this expansion board was it plugs onto there and turns it around. You put the accelerator card in here. Now, if you have the expansion board, you may be a problem using the accelerator card. There may not be enough room, so that's something we've got to look into. But I would think you could flip it over this way and then put a riser card in. All this is to be decided if we do it. I'm not promising anything on this at the moment. This is a 1200 accelerator card, drives, CD-ROMs, all the cards that you want to put in there, in division, that kind of thing. In the future, potentially, someone else could make this to make a board that gives you the slots to fill these two slot bays at the back. Because so potentially you've got two card slots you can put equipment into. Again, with the power, if you don't want to spend out initially for the power supply, you can continue to use your existing power supply on it. To be honest, I think if you're doing this, you're going down that road. There will be a cable that's going to connect the power supply to the motherboard, which is, we've got to sort that out at the moment. But you can see, so it fits in there nicely. It looks nice. I think, especially my opinion is, once the, well, this might be controversial, but once the Vampire comes to plug into there, you know, that'd be fantastic. So that'll go in there. But if you're lucky enough to have a PPC card, you can put it in there. Shouldn't be a problem with the graphics cards or SCSI cards, etc., etc. It should all fit in here nicely. And what else? Oh yeah, let's turn that lot off, and then I'll show you. God, I keep saving it. Let me just show you the 600 version. So we go down to here, 600 motherboard. Oh, yep, we still need that 1200. Sorry, go on, try. There you go. So the 600 again fits in there, but you'll notice because they're sitting here, there's going to have to be a couple of extension cables to bring to the back. And that's what these sockets are for. Extension cables, and plug them in the back. Now, normally I would have said, why do you want to put 600 in a case like this? But because of the Vampire, I would say there's a good chance people want to do it. Now, with the 1200 and the 600, we're planning on having external, right, using the 600 keyboards a no-no. Using the 1200 keyboards potentially, but would be probably really expensive because of circuit board connector, case, all that malarkey. My opinion is there are already plug-in adapters, so you can put a USB keyboard into it to use that, and so on. So that's the route we're going for. Most case builders have been doing the same thing. They are actually using PC keyboards and getting rid of the silly Windows keyboard keys and putting Amiga keys on. So that's a done deal. It's been done by lots of people, so I don't see I need to address too much on that. Obviously, the one thing on the side you'll see here is the there's a hole in here ready for that slot. In fact, if I turn the this is the difference in the case. If I turn that off and turn the 1200 motherboard, you see it sits on the right hand side, whereas the 600 sits at the back. So I've allowed just a little bit of movement because they're not in the same place. Who'd have thought? Again, the power supplies will somehow connect to the motherboards, because I think that's quite important. There's a couple of things we've got to get round to do minus voltages, but the idea is to have that power supply power everything internally. But there you go. So you can put your if you want to, you could, because the connector potentially can, even though it's a small, the 44 pin one is smaller IDE connector, you can run two drives off of it, so you can run a compact flash at the front. If you wanted to run it on the front, it's up to you. You can run it inside as normal, and then run another cable over to the DVD drive. There's so many options in this case, but that's that's for you to explore. But yeah, there's the 1200 and the 600. I hope, where's that DVD drive? It looks so much nicer when you got a DVD drive. There you go. Hope you like that. That's that. Now let's move on to the next one. Okay, so the final option for the case is one for Trevor, which is the Amiga 1 X1222 Tabor. Hope that's pronounced correct. It's basically a mini ITX motherboard, so there's no reason it wouldn't fit anyway. But I had to be sure about those dimensions, and apparently they follow the mini ITX standard, so it's all good. So if I'll turn the power supply off here, let me turn it back on again. So as you can see, we've got the board inside. I've got it, obviously I'm not going to put a GTX 1080 on it, but you'll be able to use the PCI riser and put in one of the larger, more than likely AMD cards, because I think the Radeons are the ones that are supported. However, the other option of course is to, if I switch this round, put the low profile board in, and turn off some of these bits. Okay, and then I will put in here a low profile GPU. So plenty of things you can do with it, and of course you've got all the slot bays, etc. But yeah, that'll fit in there quite nicely. Potentially, I think the X5000 might actually fit in there, to be fair, but I need to confirm that. But if you're going to use low profile cards, I see no reason why you couldn't put an X5000 if it's following micro ATX form factor, so to bear with me on that one. But yeah, but anyway, there's the Tabor. And I think it would make quite a nice case, especially if you put Raspberry Pi in here, have that running as well, it'd be great. Make another little system. So yeah, next generation Amiga, either Amiga OS 4.1 or Morphos. I think that look quite nice actually. Okay, that's the Tabor 1222. Okay, thanks very much. Hopefully that's covered most areas. In the description I'll put links to directly to the section. This is pretty much the finished design to go for prototyping. So I hopefully have the prototypes around mid January, and then go ahead with the Kickstarter in February, which hopefully works out better for people because it'll complete the Kickstarter around March. That's it really. I tried to be a bit more in depth in this one and cover everything, so look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much. Bye.